Is this the common man's skookum bush tool? Stay tuned and find out. Hi, I'm Mike, and you're watching the Blue Mountain Bushcraft and Outdoors channel. Today we're going to be doing a gauntlet review of the Condor Final Frontier. This is a new offering this year from Condor. Saw this at SHOT Show and was pretty excited to get my hands on it. So when I saw this knife at SHOT Show, the first thing I thought of was my skookum bush tool. And I thought of that because of the pommel. They have this steel plate welded in place. And that's something that's relatively unique to the skookum bush tool. This knife has about a 4.5 inch blade. The overall length is about 9 3/4 inches. The stock is about 1/8 of an inch thick, or 3 mils. It is made from Condor's 1075 high carbon steel, and it has micarta handles with hollow pins and a steel butt cap that's welded in place. First thing, before we start getting into wood processing, I want to take a moment to talk about the edge. You can see that it almost looks like a scandi grind, but it is not. It has a secondary bevel here. This had a secondary bevel on it when it was delivered to me, and the edge was crap. It was moderately sharp. I don't know what was going on with it, but it would not cut for anything. It was terrible. So what I did with this, I examined the edge and tried to preserve the original geometry as much as I possibly could while still making this into a workable cutting tool. Though as delivered, this had a little bit of a convexed secondary edge. The actual cutting edge was slightly convexed, but it was just uneven. It was crappy. So I set the angle on the work sharp and just very lightly took this through the work sharp, cleaned that edge up, evened the bevels out, and sharpened it. So that's the edge that we're working with today. All right. It is essentially as delivered, but I've cleaned it up, I've sharpened it, and just improved it a little bit. So I tried my very best not to alter the original geometry while still making this a decent cutting tool. It's been raining a fair bit the past couple of days. Things out here are pretty wet. Everything on the ground is soaking wet still. So we're going to be looking for standing deadwood, which is kind of what we look for anyway, right? See if this thing will chop. All right, the Final Frontier stinks as a chopper, but we already kind of knew that, didn't we? First thing we're going to do is take this piece of wood, and I just cut with my saw, and we'll smooth this out, make a nice little handhold, and see how the Final Frontier does at this task. Okay, these are just some real basic carving tasks. I'm gonna carve down all the bark, smooth things out a little bit, narrowed down the handle, kind of beveled the ends, popped out some of these knots. Nothing major, nothing intricate, but Condor did a great job at it. The handle is very comfortable, no hot spots at all, no indications that there are going to be any hot spots if I were to keep doing this. So far the handle's good. I like it. Alright guys, let's see how this batons. Okay, so far I've had no issues breaking this wood down. You've got a nice pile of feathers, got some intermediate kindling, smaller stuff, plenty of fuel, no hot spots on my hands. The edge geometry is pretty good for what it is, and yeah, so far I'm pretty impressed. Spine on this knife is sharpish. It's almost sharp. It almost feels like they took it to a belt that had just a little bit too much slack in it. So it'll strike a ferro rod pretty well. Not as well as I'd like. This could be sharper, but let's see if it's sharp enough. Yeah, I guess it's sharp enough, at least for the soft ferro rods. The edge, when I brought it out here, was just shaving sharp. It wasn't crazy shaving sharp, but it'd take hair. And after all that, yep. Still takes a little hair. The spine, like I said, has been sharpened to a 90 degree. It just, when you run your finger across it, it doesn't feel super sharp. It feels okay, and it did fine. The fire steel that I used was a firesteel.com. It did pretty well. But again, if this were mine, I'd tighten this up a little bit and just sharpen those corners just a little more. I think that'd be helpful. The tip, I did some prying in that rotten log. Now, the log has been down there for a while and it is rotten, but the inner part is pretty solid yet. There's still a lot of good wood left inside, and that's oak, red oak. So that's tough. So I torqued on that tip pretty good, and it's none the worse for the wear. Let's work our way back into this handle. Like I said at the beginning, this is micarta, probably canvas micarta. It is not polished. It's just rough, which I actually don't mind. It gives pretty good purchase on the knife, and as your hands get sweatier, as this gets wet, the grip gets better. So I don't mind this at all. The shape is good. It's a fairly large size handle, but this palm swell fills the hand well. It's fat enough so that thing doesn't rotate around in my hand, doesn't slip, doesn't cause hot spots. The transitions here, the fit and the finish, I guess you would call it. You know, it's not what you would expect on an LT Wright or, you know, a Beck knife or, you know, those high-end knives, but it's not bad. You know, remember guys, this thing's like, I think 50 bucks. So it's pretty good. No hot spots whatsoever. The handles taper down. So when you're doing those chest lever cuts, your thumbs just lock right in place there. You've got enough handle to shift it around in your hand for whatever kind of grip you want to do. And this pommel I find to be actually very useful. The one thing about the handle that I had forgotten to mention earlier, that I'm sure you saw, was the bow drill divot. That was included in the handle. As you can see, I have used this, and it does a pretty good job. Just touch on the sheath a little bit. Sheath is typical Condor sheath. Quality is decent. It's got a nice generous welt. Stitching is good and straight. It's only single row stitching here, but it does have rivets here and down here, so I think it'll hold up pretty well over time. There is no drainage hole for letting water get out of here, and personally I'd like to see the sheath come up just a little bit higher on here. That way you could drop this sheath down on the belt a little bit. As it is, it rides a little high for my liking. Some folks might like that. It's not bad. It holds the sheath pretty well. It's not wet formed or anything like that, but it does a decent job. Nice generous belt loop. Belt loop is riveted here and under here, and on the inside there is a piece of, I guess it's leather. I think there's another piece of leather that's glued over this top rivet so that it's not abrading on your knife handle. So pretty nice touch. I thought that was pretty cool. Alright, so the million-dollar question. Can this be considered a common man's skookum bush tool? Just look at the blades for a second. Obviously the edge grind is different. This is a true scandi. This is a pseudo scandi with a secondary bevel. This has a continuous curve to it. This has a pretty generous straight portion. The blade on the skookum is probably about a ½ an inch shorter, although when you match up the bevels there, where the blade actually starts, the difference really isn't all that much. Final Frontier has a stouter tip. Both of them have the steel welded pommel. Both of them have micarta handles. Both of them have holes running through the handles, reinforced, so that you can lash this to something or do whatever you want with them. And the style of handle is different. This has a little bit of a guard built into it. This has none of that. So yeah, they're designed for the same tasks, but really this is in no way, shape, or form a copy or rip-off of the skookum bush tool. Given the choice between the two of these guys, I'm still going to pick the skookum, but you know, I'm biased towards this knife. I've used this knife a ton. I know what it's capable of, and it just fits me to a T. I love this knife. But this one does not give up a whole lot, and in some cases it might even actually have some advantages. That larger handle really lends itself well to a variety of different grips. This one handle can sometimes be just a little bit on the small side. I don't really have an issue with it, but some folks might. The grind, I don't really mind this grind either. Grind's pretty good. It cuts well, it slices well. It's holding an edge better than some other Condors I've had. Okay, is it a skookum killer? No. But for the price, you're getting a pretty good chunk of steel, a really nice handle, a lot of good features, holds an edge well, performs well, has a decent sheath, and it's not going to break the bank. This is the first stop in the gauntlet for this, so we'll see how it does over time. Make sure you go to the gauntlet.tv, put the link for that down below, and follow this in its travels. See if this will be a good knife for you to purchase.